Khaled, thank you so much for coming in to tell us what happened to your family. As far as I understand, they were all in Gaza. Please tell us what happened.
The army of the occupiers of Israel carried out an airstrike on the house. The house consisted of 3 floors. It was blown apart. In place of the house, there was just a hole 8 meters deep, and over 5 days, the bodies of my relatives were pulled out of there. My brother and his family lived there, my 2 sisters and nephews and the wife of my second brother. The only thing we Palestinians have a habit of when wars begin is that we don't divide and settle into different houses. So God forbid that everyone does not die. And my brother and his 2 sons and my 2 sisters and my sister's son were also in the house at the time of the strike, and all died.
How did you find out about it? And you just told me that their bodies were pulled out. How did you find out about it? Who pulled out the bodies? Can you tell us?
My son called me. He's now in Gaza and he's just been living in this house, and he'd gone to another house. He was with another group.
Because they separated themselves.
Because they split up, yes. He called me, he informed me, and then I was in touch with my brother. He went there from 5 in the morning because nothing works at night due to a lack of electricity. He went there with a shovel along with friends and neighbours and helped dig out the bodies, since there's no equipment working due to the lack of gasoline, and therefore they dug out all the bodies with shovels for 5 days. They found all the bodies, including the dismembered bodies from the blast. Everyone was gathered together and buried. I was in touch with them, and for the first time my son called me and said that the aircraft had struck the house. I asked him who was alive in that house, and he told me about the last nephew who was there at that moment, and due to this information they began to search the rubble and find the bodies.
And when Israel turned off the electricity and the internet completely, you had no connection with your son at all?
I had no contact with my son. The Moscow number didn't work and the local number didn't work either. I haven't had contact with him for 2.5 days. They turned off the internet.
What did you feel in that moment? What was going through your mind?
To be honest, it was terrible because I couldn't sit still, didn't know if he was alive or not, and what was going on there at all, especially in the area where he is now. Just then, the Israelis began to storm the area. The ground operation began from this area, and they were very tough military operations, and they inflicted very strong, powerful blows. Artillery and planes struck houses.
And then what happened? Did you finally get through to him, or did he get in touch? How did you find out that he's alive and well?
Today, literally at 6 in the morning, he called me. He says that he was asleep and dreamed that the cellular connection was working. He woke up and the cellular connection was really working, and he called me. That is, it was his story. He dreamed in a dream that he woke and the telephone connection was working. So he woke up, checked that it really worked, and he called me right away. He said that he was scared because there were blasts everywhere, and in fact the whole area was destroyed. It was all rubble, and there was no water, no electricity, and no internet either. He said that a neighbouring house was hit. They're now sheltering, but for almost 20 days they've gone without water, without electricity. To be honest, I don't know how they survive. When I talked to my nephew, he said that salt water was brought to them because there was no other supply.
From what I understand, even the salt water is contaminated.
It's dirty, you can't drink it. It's just to use to wash and so on. And there's simply no filtered water since there's no electricity. And the stocks that are left in the house, they're trying to ration it. They're only used for drinking.
And now what? Are they waiting? What do they expect? Do they think that it will get worse or better? What are their thoughts now? They're there with no water, no electricity, no internet, no reception, or it comes and goes. What are their thoughts now?
The only thoughts they have now is the hope that it will all eventually stop. That is, the combat and military aggression on the part of the occupiers will cease. But at the moment, it only increases.
So what can you do? What do you tell your son now that the phone reception is back?
What can I say? I'm waiting for a diplomatic resolution of the issue in order to at least get my son out of there. It's the first time in his life he's got into such a situation. He'd never seen anything like it. He lived in Moscow, in a quiet city.
Is he shocked?
He's obviously in shock. He lost nephews with whom he was friends and his aunt with whom he lived in this house, and naturally he is in shock. He doesn't realize it yet. He's holding on, but nevertheless.
Khaled, thank you so much. I really hope that this will all be resolved somehow so that people can go back to a normal life as soon as possible. So many children are dying because hospitals have no electricity, water, or anything. Halit, thank you for sharing your story with us. I hope your family can find a way to come here, or maybe you can go there. Thank you so much.